inner city prepping, downtown prepping, can it be done, how to do it, all that good stuff. So obviously you can do prepping while living downtown or inner city or whatever. You watch Angry Prepper, then obviously he lives in downtown New York City as of right now. But I used to live in downtown El Paso, stone's throw away from Mexico, stone's throw away from downtown, the main park. I can't remember the name of it right now off the top of my head, but it's kind of the statue of the alligators, if you've ever been over there. But I used to live in a multi-story building downtown in an apartment. So I feel like I can talk a little bit about prepping downtown or inner city. And yes, it can be done. And it's got its advantages and it's also got its disadvantages. Now, obviously the disadvantages, if you don't like people, well then, what are you doing downtown if you don't like people? But there's going to be a lot of people downtown, especially in apartments. Obviously SHTF situations. Everyone says to avoid the cities like the plague. Well, not everyone's going to be able to, and I completely get it. I completely understand. So one of the big disadvantages is there's going to be a lot of people. You're not going to get around that, especially if you live downtown in a bigger city like El Paso. Not saying that El Paso is a big city, but it's got a metropolitan over a million people. So what are some other disadvantages is, well, usually apartments are multi-story buildings, and in an SHTF you're not going to exactly want to trust the elevators per se, especially if the power's out, then you're not going to use the elevators. So if you are not on the first or second floor, you're going to be hoofing it up those extra stairs when you're not, when you don't necessarily want to. There are some advantages as well to prepping downtown, inner city, in an apartment. One of those advantages is, you're not really going to be spending any money while times are good. You're not going to be spending any money on maintaining the apartment that you're in. That's going to be the landlord's job, is to maintain, keep up with the maintenance. So you're going to save a little bit of money on maintenance, while you might pay a little more in rent, depending on if rent is separate, if it doesn't include electricity or water. So you might be paying a little bit more in that aspect. Just depends on where you are, I guess, though. To a multi-story building, there are advantages and disadvantages. Like I said, the disadvantages are the multiple stairs, especially if you live at the top floor. But living on the top floor gives you a unique advantage as well, and that's going to be your field of vision, especially if it's like a 5 or 6 story building. You're going to be able to see a lot from that, from that top floor. Per se, it's not blocked by skyscrapers or anything. I had skyscrapers in my field of vision in my apartment building when I lived in El Paso. So I could see a lot, but I couldn't really see a whole lot. So what are some things that you should do in an apartment? Well, obviously, if you're the average prepper, then you're going to want to store as much food and water as you physically possibly can. Just be careful on when you're buying your preps and you're taking them home. I would not buy, especially if you live in an apartment building, I would not buy a lot of my preps at one time and take them all in at once. You have the high chance of people seeing you bringing in a ton of food and a ton of water. And if things go bad, things go south, and that's something that your neighbors might have noticed and might have remembered. They may have ill intentions, So you're gonna want to keep it, keep it down for what your neighbors can see you bringing in, and also make sure you're not storing your preps visibly from your front windows and or doors, or if you live on the first floor or so that you can't see any of the windows. Just keep them out of sight. That way nosy people aren't going to notice that you have all of your preps, and higher chance of them leaving you alone if they don't know what you have. So I would recommend, if you can, to maybe buy every other day or every third day and bring in food and water that way, and potentially bring it in at night. That way it's even harder for them to see what you're bringing in. So, just stay gray man. Gray man in the inner cities is going to be your absolute best friend. If you don't know what gray man is blending in to the best of your ability with the rest of the population. Look alike. Look like everybody else. That way you're less memorable. Nobody's going to notice you, or they're not going to notice you as much. You're just another Joe in the crowd. That kind of thing. You fit in. You look like you fit in, but you're prepared. So keep that appearance of the gray man up. It's not necessarily meaning, wear gray. If you live in a rural area, then, wear the average attire in that area. That would be gray man. You live in the inner city, you look like you live in the inner city. That would be gray man. Keep that appearance up. That's going to be your biggest thing. So, like I said, whenever you're buying food and water, limit it to every other day or every third day or so, and bring it in at night. That way, they're not seeing you as much, and they're not seeing as much as you're bringing in. And it looks a little bit more normal. People in the cities, sometimes they go to the grocery store every day. Sometimes it's every other day. Yeah, just keep that appearance up. That kind of thing, if you live in an apartment, especially if it's a multi-story apartment and you have a balcony, you can come up with some creative ideas on planters for vegetables. Like I've seen PVC pipes. It's kind of like a rack kind of thing. They cut into the PVC pipes, they put dirt in it, it's easily portable. You can put it out on the balcony if you have one. Good idea, water it inside. You can water it any time of day inside. Whenever you do go to put it out, make sure, there's really no water to evaporate off the plant, or that could potentially burn the plant. So I'd suggest watering it, and then maybe 30 minutes later to an hour later, you can go ahead and put it outside if you've got the balcony. Also, if you have, you can use solar panels. You can put them up in the windows, or if you've got that balcony, you can put it on the balcony. You could do a solar generator kind of deal, or you can plug the generator into the wall while the electric is up, the grid is up. Put it in the wall. Store energy that way. Would recommend, you can get a water bob for the bathtub. That would be, I think the Angry Pepper did a video on that a while ago, like maybe last year. He did a water bob video. It's this pretty much this big plastic thing, this container thing that it's kind of like a bladder. You put it in the bathtub, fill it up with water, and it pretty much takes the shape of the bathtub and stores your water in it, which would be a lot of water. I would recommend boiling it before drinking it, kind of thing. And remember, the rule of thumb is 1 gallon of drinking water per person per day. And I always say, if you live out in the deserts or in El Paso, even in downtown, I would recommend 2 gallons of drinking water per day per person per day, to exclude water for showering or bathing or cooking and cleaning with. So water is going to be very important. And I just want to make sure y'all know that you can still store plenty of water in an apartment. While it might not be as convenient, water is still extraordinarily essential. So you need to find ways to store it. You can store it in your closets or under the bed if you can, and in your pantry. Maybe keep a case out in the visible, in the kitchen. That way, a lot of people have it visible, like a case of water or so. You can do that. Obviously, you're probably not going to likely have 55-gallon drums full of water in an apartment. If you do, let me know how y'all store it. And obviously, the same goes for canned food, freeze-dried food, dehydrated food. You can store plenty of canned food in your pantry, in your closet, or under the bed, etc. There's still a lot of things that you can do in an apartment. You can, if you want, if you have the ability to or the income, you can still buy a freeze dryer and freeze dried food in your apartment. While they are a little bit on the noisier side, they take up, some electricity. It would be a wise investment if you have the money to do so. You can still dehydrate food in your apartment, and you can still can food in your apartment, which I would recommend doing either or both, because like I said, in an apartment you got limited space. You're not gonna, the odds of you going out to the country and hunting for food is gonna be slim to none. So you're gonna want to stock up on as much as you can, and it is definitely still possible in an apartment. One thing I would, or a couple things that I would recommend, is to get with your landlord and ask if you could install like a night lock system and or like 3-inch screws in your door frame to strengthen your main entrance, and ask to see if you could do like window tinting on your windows. Not only will it help keep the sun from wrecking the interior of your apartment and heating the place up potentially even more than you need it to, it'll help keep prying eyes out. But not everybody, not all apartments are going to be able to do that. The one that I lived in, they weren't going to allow window tints. I don't know why. It was just one of their stupid little rules. And that is one of the downsides of apartments is, apartments have their own rules and regulations. So make sure you're up to date on what you can and can't do in your apartment. Just get with your landlord and see what you can and can't do, and express some ideas. Don't give them the idea that you are a prepper though. Especially if if the landlord lives in that building and SHTF does go down, they know who's a prepper and who's not. Try to keep that information from them as much as you can. There's no legal obligation for you to let them know that you're a prepper. When you're living in an apartment, in my opinion, when I was living in an apartment, we had security cameras all over the place, inside and out. So while yes, I recommend everybody having security cameras inside and out, whether it be on your apartment or on your 50-acre homestead, security cameras definitely, but even more so important when you're in an apartment, in my opinion, just because you have so many people. I would recommend having security cameras. One that can see the outside of your apartment, that can see your doorstep. You can monitor who's going by your place. Have some on the interior of your apartment, at least in your main entrance. That way, any windows that can be accessible from the outside, like from if you're on ground level, then have security cameras that can see all the windows. If you're on an upper level, then sorry, the truck just did something weird. If you're on an upper level, then you know, if all you know, having security cameras that can see any windows into your front door on the front side of your building, that, you know, if there's like a walkway, you know, have them facing that. So like in my old apartment, it would have been the living room and kitchen that would have been accessible from the front. If you had a really, really tall ladder, then maybe you would have been able to get access to the the other windows, but don't really see that happening. You know, that's a lot of effort. And lastly, when you're living in an apartment, obviously you know the layout of your apartment, and apartments are, in my opinion, would be more susceptible to break-ins, especially during an event. So what my recommendation would be is, if you do not already, have some sort of barrier between your front door and your bedroom. You know, that way, let's say somebody breaks into your apartment and you come out and they're armed, you're armed, and you know, like I said, you know your apartment, they don't, unless they've been inside of it. That way you have a barrier, you can get down, duck behind, and get cover. And if an exchange of fire is needed, you know you can use that barrier to protect yourself. And if you're going to do something like that, I would definitely recommend maybe making sure it's made of something that's going to stop, you know, at least 9mm, or significantly slow down a 9mm or 45. That's my apartment or inner city prepping recommendations, guideline, whatever you want to call it.